Hello, good evening. Welcome, everyone. Let's take just a second here and let all of the participants join the webinar. Looks like we got some folks coming in here. That's great. Give just a second here for more folks to come in. For those of you who are just joining now, you're coming in, welcome. My name's Jason. It's my partner in crime here. Kevin will be your presenters tonight. But while we're waiting for everybody to come in, we always like to get a sense of kind of who is on the call, who's on the webinar, excuse me, and where y'all are from. So, if you would please maybe let us know, what state you live in and what class your student is in, class of 26 or 27, class of 28, just to give us a kind of a sense of where everyone's located and whether you have rising seniors or juniors. Looks like lots of 26s. Okay, that's great. That's great. Vegas, New Hampshire, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Colorado, Michigan, okay, Minnesota, New York. Oh, we got a 28 there. Lots and lots of 26s. All right, very good. So probably some stressed out parents if you have rising seniors. We're already, almost to July, so everything is right around the corner here. So, all right. So I think we got kind of everybody. Looks like everyone's made it in. Um, Again, welcome to tonight's presentation. We're going to be taking a dive into financial aid basics, kind of financial aid 101, of course, but also some special rules around special cases, divorce, co-parenting, blended family cases, homeowners, business owners, and that kind of stuff. So hopefully this will be helpful for you tonight. Um, we're going to it'll be a high level talk tonight. There's going to be lots of complexity in all these special cases. So we're just going to kind of give a lot of generalizations. So if you have any questions, about your particular situation over, you can drop them in the Q&A. And whichever of us is not talking, we'll try to answer the questions in the Q&A. Now, if they're very specific or require more information, we're probably not going to be able to get into that in the Q&A. But there's good news. If you have complexity in your case or you have special questions that we can't answer in the webinar or in the Q&A, we are going to offer a free consultation, free 15-minute consultation with either me or Kevin. We'll drop the link to that. Oh, Kevin just dropped the link to schedule that in the chat there. So again, we're going to keep high level view here of financial aid tonight. Try to answer as many questions as we can in the Q&A, but everyone is invited to take advantage of this free consultation. You click that link that Kevin just dropped in the chat, and that'll take you out to the calendar. Just pick a day and time that's convenient for you, and we'll talk to you about your case and try to give you some guidance. So, and some housekeeping rules. Like I said, make sure you put all of your questions in the Q&A. Don't drop them in the chat because we won't notice them probably. We'll be paying attention to the Q&A. And we'll go about 45 minutes probably. And then that should leave a little bit of time for maybe some live Q&A at the end. So, all right, how about we go ahead and get started? Murph, you want to bring up some slides?
That sounds good, but do you want to introduce yourself?
Oh, yeah, right. We should introduce ourselves. That's right. Oh, yeah. Oh, I know you. You know me, but they don't know
Yeah,
us.
we know each
Okay.
other.
Yeah, that's right. Sorry, everyone. My name is Jason Sloan. I'm one of the college planning pros here on the team. A little bit about my background. I've been in higher ed for over 20 years. I've been a college professor since 2002. I was also a university dean at two different universities over 7 years. So I always joke I'm the former dean that spills the beans.
Gets me
Also,
every time.
but more importantly, I am a parent of three. I have two kids in college right now myself, so I've gone through this as a parent. I feel your pain. I have a rising senior and a rising sophomore and then a ninth grader in high school. So I had to learn this stuff out of self-interest. I had to figure out how to put my own kids through college. So I've been doing this since 2019, actually, when my oldest first started looking at college. I had to figure out how to get the cost down and how to pay that bill. So, Kevin, you want to tell us a little bit about you?
Yeah, of course. So, well, first off, I love presenting with the former dean that spills the beans. But yeah, so I'm one of the college planning experts here. Both Jason and myself, we're on the financial side, right? So we also have folks on our team who handle college admissions, but we both don't. I got into this from financial services. So started this is pretty natural in terms of financial services. Families are always concerned with the cost of college, but I fell in love with college financial aid, and it's similar time to you, Jason. 2019 for you, 2018 for me.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I've been doing it since then. And love what I do.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
But
Yeah,
that's enough about us. I will say this: we're getting some great questions in the Q&A, but some of them are way too specific to answer on a presentation like this. So we will do our best to answer every question that we can, every question that we're comfortable answering, but some of them require a deeper conversation. So just
yeah,
want to throw that out there. But
yeah. Yep. Again, you take advantage of a free console. Go ahead and click the link now and schedule time if you want to. But also, common question we get, will we get a recording of this video? And the answer is yes. Yeah, you'll definitely get a recording of this. So keep an eye out for the link in an email. So all right. So if you don't know who we are College Aid Pro, and what we get up every day in service of this one mission. We're trying to help end the student debt crisis by empowering families to shop smarter for college. What that means in English is that we work with parents. There's tons of resources out there to support students on the admission side, test prep, tutoring, essay, and so forth. We support parents. So we focus on helping the parents with the financial side because it is such an college is so expensive these days. It's such a huge investment. It's also not just costly, but it's complicated, it's confusing, it's stressful. So our mission is to work with parents to help you put your kids through college, ideally without having to take on a mountain of debt. So that's what we do here at College Aid Pro. So why don't we go ahead and jump right into tonight's presentation. Um, uh, Great. I forgot about this slide.
yeah,
So parents
oh,
often ask us, where do we even start? We're kind of overwhelmed by all this. We've heard about the FAFSA or whatever. And where you should start is set up a free MyCap account. If you don't have one, set up a MyCap account. It is free. And we actually just rolled out 2.0 of the software. And so the MyCap account, you'll fill out your profile, you'll answer a bunch of questions about your student, their grades and test scores, and what kind of major they're interested, when they're going to graduate, and then they'll fill out some financial information about your family, and then the system's going to project all kinds of information about financial aid for your family to be extremely helpful. So Kevin just dropped the link to MyCap in the chat. It's mycap.collegeaidpro.com. So if you don't have one, step one is create a MyCap account. It's free.
perfect.
Okay, yeah. So let's start. So we're going to take a deeper dive towards the second half of tonight's presentation on these special cases. Again, divorced, blended, co-parenting families, homeowners, business owners. But let's start with just a basic intro about financial aid, okay? Because financial aid is actually quite complicated. So what is financial aid? Well, financial aid is simply any discount off of the cost of college, or what we call the sticker price. Okay, so a lot of these colleges play a pricing game where they'll have an advertised cost of attendance, what we call the sticker price, but then they'll give you financial aid to get the cost down. So it's bad news, good news. It looks like it's super expensive, which it is, but it's not as bad because most parents don't pay the full sticker price. But the bad news is that makes it difficult for you to plan as a parent and compare apples to apples. Like, how much are these colleges actually going to cost us? Because a lot of times you don't know what the financial aid is going to be till the end of the process, which is why we exist as a company. We try to help families with that on the front end. So there are different types of financial aid. There's three different types. The two best kind of types of financial aid are grants and scholarships. All right. So grants are that's free money that brings the cost of college down. It's free money to you, and it's based entirely on your financial profile. Okay. And so, if you can demonstrate that you have financial need, you can get grants. And again, that's free money, brings the cost of college down. The second kind are scholarships, or in the jargon, merit based aid. And this is based on your student's talent profile. So, grades, test scores, or the ability to throw a football or something like that. And that's completely independent of your financial profile. That's based entirely on the student. Okay. So merit-based scholarships, need-based grants, both they're called gift aid because it's aid, it's a gift to you of money. That free money brings the cost of college down. So you want to get as much of that as you possibly can to get the cost down. Okay. The other type of financial aid is called self-help aid. And self-help aid comes in two forms: work study, which is basically a job offer on a campus. You can work in the library or the cafeteria or whatever, and they'll give your kid a check every 2 weeks and they can use it to help pay for college. But it's just a job, so it doesn't bring the cost of college down. It just helps you pay it. And then, of course, loans. All right. And so loans count as financial aid in this system, but loans, you got to be very careful about them. That is not free money. So if you get a loan offer, it's not bringing the cost of college down. In fact, it's increasing the cost of college because when you pay those loans back, they come with interest. Okay, so high level view when it comes to your financial aid from schools, you want to try to get as much grants and scholarships and minimize the amount of loans that you have to take out. Okay, so let's start with need-based aid. Are you going to be eligible for any need-based aid? Well, there is a formula that schools use to determine this. Okay, sorry for all the jargon, but this is how the system works. You got to become familiar with the jargon to really understand it. It's COA minus SAI equals need. What does that mean? COA is the cost of attendance, or again, what we call the sticker price. Okay, and that is all in. So schools, when they advertise how much they cost, they have to calculate, of course, the tuition, but they have to include estimates for everything else, room and board, your dorm, your cafeteria plan, that kind of thing, but books and fees and personal expenses and all that kind of stuff. So that's the total cost of attendance for college. And then when you file your financial aid application forms in the fall, we're going to talk more about that here later in the webinar. You're going to put your income and your assets on those forms. And what you put on those forms, they're going to generate this number that gets assigned to your family, and it's called a student aid index, the SAI. It used to be called the EFC, by the way. If you have older kids, you might know it as the EFC. And that's basically an estimate of what they think you can afford, and therefore how much need-based aid to give you. Okay. And the difference between their cost and your SAI is your need. So if a school costs $90,000 and your SAI is $50,000, you have $40,000 of need. Okay. Now, what's important to know is will you be eligible for need? And secondly, will the school meet your need with grants? Because technically, a school can meet your need with loans. Okay, here's where it starts getting really complicated. So if you're again $90,000, let's say you got $50,000 SAI, you have 40 grand of need. Some schools will meet 100% of that need with grants. So that's free money. Your out-of-pocket costs would be 50 or so. Other schools will only meet two-thirds of that with grants, and then the other third they say, nope, you're gonna have to take out loans. Sorry. So you need to know your SAI, you need to know their cost of attendance, and you need to know the percentage of aid that is met with grants so you can start doing some accurate forecasting on how much schools are actually going to cost. Okay, so that's the need-based aid part of this. And now you're probably wondering, well, how do they determine our SAI? That number is so important because, from a high level, the lower your SAI, potentially the lower the cost of college. So how do they determine this? Well, in the fall, if you're a rising senior, it'll be just a couple of months from now, you're going to have to file the FAFSA, that's the free application for federal student aid. And then at many other schools, you got to file a second form called the CSS profile. And on those forms, they're basically going to ask you about your non-retirement assets and your income. So let's take a little bit of a minute to talk about those. Now, your assets that you have to report, that's basically everything that's not in a retirement account. So if it's in a retirement account, no worry about it. They're not going to assess that. Okay. But they're going to ask for anything your student owns in terms of an asset and anything parents own in terms of an asset. And depending on, here's where it gets complicated. If it's a parent owned asset, it's going to be assessed at a lower rate than a student owned asset. All right. So parents, generally speaking, parent owned assets are assessed about 5.6%. So if you have $100,000 that the parent owns, they think about 5,600 bucks, so that can be used for college. But if it's a student owned asset, they assess it at 20%. So of that 100K, if a student had it in the student's name, it'd be $20,000 of that would go to college. Okay. Now, if you have grandparents that have 529 plans, which is the education savings account, very common one, lots of people have them, grandparent assets are not assessed at all. So there is a planning opportunity, especially for those of you who have younger kids, 27, the class of 27, 28, 29. If a grandparent wants to help with college, they can put the money in a grandparent on 529. It doesn't hit your SAI at all. Also, sibling 529s are not included. Common mistake we see families make, which causes them to lose out on aid. Now, if your kid has a trust, a UGMA or UTMA, that's a student owned asset. It's going to be assessed at a higher rate than a parent owned 529. So you can see how this gets really complicated real fast. And it's high stakes, right? Because again, the higher your SAI is, the less financial need based aid you possibly could get. If you have a jointly owned account, you got a kid, your kid has an account at the local bank, savings account or something, and you're on that account and they're the minor and you're the parent, that's actually your money, not theirs from a financial aid perspective. That's another mistake we see parents make. And real estate, we'll take a little bit deeper dive later, but basically, for schools that only use the FAFSA, They don't assess the home equity in your primary residence, but they will assess any equity in any other real estate. If you have a second home, a condo, a farm, or something like that. But CSS profile schools will assess, they will ask you to report how much equity you have in your primary residence, as well as any other real estate. But here's where it gets, again, more complex is not every school that requires a CSS profile assesses it the same. Some think 100% of your primary residence home equity is liquid for college, and others will say 60%. Some say none at all. So again, this is the stuff you need to be aware of as you're going through this process to really be able to be an informed consumer. Okay,
Can I
and
jump in one sec?
yeah,
You know
absolutely,
how you just said that about the primary residence? I know a lot of families on tonight's calls are business owners. Well, colleges also look at the value of your business, right? And they're going to assess that too, in many cases, as a liquid asset. So you have to be very mindful of that. I
absolutely.
just wanted to jump in and reiterate that.
No, that's absolutely great because we're trying to drive home the message here that this is really complicated stuff, and if you make mistakes, you could lose out on thousands of dollars of financial aid potentially. So they determine the value of your assets as of the date of the filing. So if you file the FAFSA and the CSS profile on October 15th, whatever's in there, that's what you're supposed to report. So hint, hint, pay all your expensive bills on October 14th. All right. Okay, so that's the asset side of the equation. What about the income? So they're going to take the income that you earned in the tax year prior to the year you enter college. Again, sorry about all the complexity, but this is the system we're working with. So if your kid's going to college in 26, they're going to look at the income from tax returns in 2024. All right, so it's a 2 year look back, and primarily what they look at is your adjusted gross income, which is line 11 on 1040. Okay, and that's usually the biggest driver in the SAI calculation. All right, so if you're a class of 26 or 27, you're probably too late to be able to do anything with your income from that year unless you haven't filed tax returns or something. But if you need to do an amendment, perhaps, we don't give tax advice. We're not CPAs. But if you are, a parent of a 28 or a 29, this is a planning opportunity for you. You know ahead of time you got a year coming up where if you can drive your AGI down, you could qualify potentially for more need-based aid when your student goes to college. Okay, and now students on the FAFSA do have an income allowance of about 9,400 bucks, although that number might be changing. So the kid can have a little part-time job. But with CSS profile schools, it's more complicated. They use a different methodology, so student income uh, can count against your SAI at CSS profile schools. Sorry, I know this is very complicated, but hopefully they at least give you kind of a sense of how this SAI, your family's SAI, is going to be determined, which again is the most important number because it determines how much age you get.
You
So,
should see some of the questions that we're getting. We're getting some great questions out there. So keep them
are,
coming, please.
oh,
Yeah, getting
awesome,
really
awesome,
good
good deal.
questions. Yeah.
I'm glad I'm talking then and you're
Yeah.
answering. That's awesome. Okay, so what if you don't qualify for any need-based aid? You're looking through this, you're like, oh my gosh, we got a condo in Florida, or we make too much income. We're not going to get any need-based aid. Are we out of luck? Are we full pay? No, not necessarily, because the other kind of gift aid you could get is merit-based scholarships. Okay. So if you're a super high income or super high asset family, the other strategy you can use instead of trying to get need-based aid is try to get merit aid. Okay. But not all schools give merit scholarships. You need to identify which schools are going to give your kid scholarship and how much. Okay. Um, and even if you don't qualify for any need-based aid or you think you don't, this is another big mistake parents make. We talk to parents all the time. They're like, oh, we're not going to get any aid. And then we run the numbers for them. And well, actually, you are going to get need-based aid, especially if you can move some things around potentially like assets or whatever. But even if you're not going to get need-based aid, if you're super high income, super high asset, you probably still are going to want to file the FAFSA and the CSS profile because many scholarships require those. Okay, let me say that again. Even if you're high income, you're not going to need based aid, still file the FAFSA and the CSS profile because most schools that offer scholarships require those to be in place. Okay, so you could leave money on the table if you're like, it's a waste of time. I'm not going to file it. I've seen this happen where parents come to me too late and they're like, oh, my kid could have gotten a scholarship, but I didn't file the FAFSA. Is it too late? I'm like, yeah, it's too late. Okay, so if you want to know which schools give scholarships and how much, good news, my cap will tell you. Okay, we have all the scholarships for all the schools in the country in there. You just plug in the schools you're interested in, and it's going to tell you whether or not your kid's eligible for scholarships and potentially how much. Okay, and again, it's merit scholarships. It's a tricky game because it's a school by school basis. Some schools are very generous with merit scholarships. Other schools don't give any. This is another big mistake I see, especially with families with high achieving students. They're trying to get to the Ivy Leagues, right? Ivy Leagues don't give any academic scholarships. Neither do a lot of elite privates like the NESCAC schools, the Northeastern small colleges up in the New England area, right? And I've seen this before. I had a parent reach out. It was too late. They're like, my kid got a 36 on the ACT. I thought I was going to get a full ride scholarship to Yale or Harvard. They get into Yale and Harvard, they're full pay because they didn't understand that those kinds of schools don't give merit. So got to know whether or not the schools give merit. And if they do give merit, one of the things you might want to do as a strategy is to apply to a competing college, because if that competing college gives you a bigger scholarship, you might be able to go back to the your college of choice and say, "Hey, your competitor over there gave me a bigger scholarship. Can you match it or beat it?"
So we got a question that I just want to address on this slide.
Yeah.
At what income level does need-based aid dry up? It
Oh
all
boy.
depends on the cost of the college, but like I worked with plenty of families this year who, if you just looked at their income, 500, so did you at Trinity, 500, 600,000, they wouldn't qualify for need-based aid. But sometimes on appeal, you can still get need-based grants, not a lot, but you can still get need-based grants. So there isn't necessarily a specific income level, but income is the largest driving factor behind how much the college is, what they use to calculate your SAI, your family contribution. So higher the income, the less financial aid you can qualify for. Biggest factor, somewhere around like 20-25% of your adjusted gross income. So with that being said, if you're making $400,000, simple math, you're probably not going to qualify for need-based aid. But if you have two children in school, if you have special circumstances that can be addressed on appeal, you might. So I just wanted to, on this slide, I thought it was appropriate because a lot of families think that they might not qualify for need-based aid, but there's a
Yeah.
really good chance they do.
I just met with a family that thought that as well, and is in the medical field. And when we put in the fact that they had 5 children, and it was like, yep, you're actually going to qualify for some aid. So,
Yeah. I want to spend a few minutes in my cap.
oh
Just
yeah, great. That's a
what we
great, yep, great idea. Because I was just talking a little bit about how they project scholarships. So let's show
Yep.
them.
Can you see this?
Yep.
Everyone see it? All right, we're good. So just a couple of quick things, right? We put the link to create your free MyCap account. To get started, we are going to ask just some basic information. So like names, student info, graduating year, test scores, parent information. Let me actually move this over here so I can see it. All right. Parent information. Most importantly, income and assets, right? These income and assets that are in here are used to calculate your SAI. And then also, we ask your college budget because that goes towards affordability. So let me go back. So as soon as you put all of that information in, you are going to see your SAI. And your SAI is going to be specific to your family, your income, your assets. You've got your federal SAI, which is the FAFSA, and your institutional SAI, which is the CSS profile. And there's a range because of home equity. And then you're also going to see your college budget listed here as well. Now, let's say you go and put in 10 different schools, right? And you can see here the projected net cost at each of these schools. So we've got American University. American has a cost of 83,000, but MyCap's projecting a cost of 51,000. And you can even break down, well, what do we expect the cost to be in the future? And how is that $83,000 divided up? Tuition, room, board, etc. But most importantly, are they giving a lot of need-based aid? Or are they also giving merit, right? 18.7% of students get merit. So there's definitely some merit there. We have all of the merit scholarships that American offers broken down here. You can see based on GPA and test scores, that's what's listed. And then is it affordable for your family? For this example, and just to be clear, this is an example family. For this example, no, right? We're saying be very cautious. This is going to be way too expensive. And that's based on how much a family would need to take in student loans. So definitely focus on that. But just from what Jason just said, I think let me go here for a minute. I think the most relevant tab would be merit scholarships. based on that last slide, and based on your students' test scores, based on their GPA, we're going to be able to tell you how much they should receive in merit from pretty much any school across the country. All right. So let's dive out of here. I just wanted to show that for a second and minimize this. Screen sharing is always fun.
Yeah.
Um,
Just got a great question. I'm typing the answer, but I'll say it out loud. Do they look at income and account for high cost of living? The answer is no, they don't. But that may be something you can bring up in an appeal.
I get that question from families in the Bay Area all the time.
Yeah, yeah,
But
absolutely. Yeah.
all right,
Okay.
let's dive
You,
into the forms.
yeah, you want to do it? You want me to take it?
Yeah, you can take it.
Okay. So as I said before, every school is going to require the FAFSA. Okay, that stands for Free Application for Federal Student Aid. So a lot of times I hear parents say, well, the FAFSA didn't give me anything. So the FAFSA is just an application for aid. Okay, so you're going to submit an application and you're going to be asking for financial aid. So it's just the application form. It goes live October 1st. Hopefully. The last 2 years, it was delayed till December 1st, but we've been told by the department it's going to be live October 1st. And so your student is going to have to create an FAFSA ID, an FSA ID, and the contributing parent's going to have to submit create an FSA ID. You can create those now, but you can't file the FAFSA, excuse me, until October 1st. Okay. So the FAFSA then, once you uh, give it permission, is going to pull over your income tax return from the prior year. Again, for class of 26, that'd be your returns from 2024. All right. And this is very important because part of tonight's webinar is for families who are divorced, blended co-parent situations. Only the custodial parent submits this form. And the way that's defined is the parent who provides the most financial support. And that gets very tricky. So if you're in that situation, I highly recommend doing a 15-minute consult with us so we can go over this with you so you don't make mistakes here. Okay. And so in some cases, it's not necessarily the parent who makes the most income or pays child support, because it could be the case. I've seen this plenty of times where one parent makes a higher income and pays child support, but the other parent ends up picking up the tab for everything. And so that parent would file the FAFSA because they're actually providing more financial support. Okay. And so it's required by every student and the custodial parent. But for FAFSA only schools, the non-custodial parent does not have to file. Now, in addition, there are about 250 schools or so that require a second form, and it's in addition to, it's not instead of. Okay, so if you're applying to a CSS profile school, you're going to have to do both the FAFSA and the CSS profile. Like the FAFSA, this goes live on October 1st. Okay, but very different. Okay, the CSS profile is an absolute bear of an application. Okay, lots more questions, lots more questions, much more invasive. Okay, so just some differences I want to point out. Okay, home equity is treated as a liquid asset on this form. So if you're applying to schools that are FAFSA only, they're not even going to ask about the home equity in your primary residence. But if you file a CSS profile, you're going to CSS profile school, they will ask for the home equity. Okay, so you want to be very careful not to artificially inflate the market value of your home. This is a big mistake we see a lot of parents make. I know as a homeowner, you want to feel like your home's worth as much as possible, but that could hurt you from a financial aid perspective. So be leery of Zillow and those kinds of sites where they tend to artificially inflate the values. You want to have a more accurate market value for financial aid purposes. Okay, but they will treat it as a liquid asset. And the second thing, big difference for the CSS profile is the non-custodial parent also has to file. So FAFSA only, it's just the custodial. CSS profile, it is the custodial and non-custodial. And they will include, if you're remarried, the income and assets of your new partner as well. Okay. Now, so that's really, really important there. Okay. So both are going to have to file. And each parent's going to have a separate account and contribute to the student's account, right? Now, business owners, as Kevin said earlier, this is a really important form for you as well because it's going to ask you lots of questions about your business, including your business value. Okay. And so, just like with being a homeowner, you want to think your business is worth a whole bunch of money, and it probably is and could be. But what you put down in terms of a business value is going to impact your student aid index. And so, you definitely don't want to inflate the value of your business, artificially make it seem like it's worth more than it really is, because that could cause you to, drive up your student aid index and potentially lose out on aid. The other thing is they treat business expenses in a complicated kind of way. Some schools will treat your business expenses again in a complicated way. We're going to get into too much of the weeds of the details here. If you are a business owner, again, I highly recommend doing a consult with us because these are complex cases. And you have to actually have a lot of planning opportunities if you're a business owner, especially if you have a freshman or sophomore and a rising ninth grader or 10th grader, because you have some planning opportunities to where maybe you can get your AGI down in that base income year. Now, there are some cases we get this question a lot. Well, their dad or their mom is not in their lives anymore, or they're not participating, they're not cooperative, they're not going to help with college at all. So, so that they're not even going to file. Well, they have to. Okay, if the non-custodial parent doesn't file CSS profile, your kid won't get any financial aid. The only exceptions to that is you can ask for a waiver for the non-custodial parent if it's an extreme situation and you have documentation to support it. So there's no communication with the child. There's not been any communication for a long time. They're not contributing in any kind of way whatsoever. And so you would file in those kinds of cases a non-custodial parent waiver and request for aid to be distributed without the income and assets reported by the non-custodial parent. But it's a very difficult process. So if that's your situation, definitely, again, talk to us, get a free consult with us so we can give you some guidance on that because that's a tricky situation. Okay. And as I said, CSS profile is very invasive. I hope I don't offend anyone on this call, but one parent described it to me as a financial colonoscopy. So I just leave that there. Again, I hope it didn't offend anybody, but it really is tough. And it's high stakes. If you get anything wrong on this, it could cost you tens of thousands of dollars of financial aid. So
Specifically for business owners and divorced families, right? It's I think the more complexities you add to it, the more opportunities for mistakes. On the CSS profile, when you're a business owner, there's literally more questions. When you're divorced, there's the non-custodial profile. So there's more room for error. I do want to just spend one more minute. I know I'm jumping back and forth here, so bear with me. But I do want to spend 1 minute showing in my cap
oh yeah, that's a good idea.
the form section. So I'm going to screen share again. So here we go. So if you look here, we go to the financial aid forms tab. Right. So for anyone who actually has a premium account, we do have, and by the way, there's a free version and then there's a paid version, but we do have line by line of the forms. Peg does not go into actual strategy and tells you what to report. She just goes over the forms and gives tips in terms of what questions to skip and what questions to answer. But this is super helpful for families. So I just wanted to point that out. And then in addition to that, once you actually add schools, they will get populated here. So let me stop sharing again and screen sharing tonight. All right, let me go back here. We good? Can you see this?
Yes, we're good.
All right. Want me to take
Okay,
this one?
I'll do one more. How about that?
Okay, that's perfect.
Okay. So, in terms of the process and the timeline, those of you who are rising seniors, you're going to be filing the FAFSA and the CSS profile this fall. Again, they open October 1st. And then they're going to take that income and assets, generate an SAI. The SAI is going to be determine how much need-based aid you get, et cetera. So then you're going to wait. And in the spring, usually February, March, April, you're going to start getting financial aid award offers from all these schools. And I use that word on purpose. These are offers. And I don't know if you saw the New York Times article this week, but Syracuse just got busted on this. A lot of schools will lowball. the students, right? These schools are businesses, they're trying to maximize their revenues. Even though they're nonprofit, they are definitely trying to get as much money out of you as possible. So a lot of schools will lowball you on that first offer, hoping you'll accept it and overpay. But you,
Syracuse, they're all
Syracuse.
over the news.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, yeah, right. That's got to be someone's probably getting fired there. But anyway, I digress. Um, so in the spring, you can appeal all of those financial aid offers and ask for more money. Okay. And there's different kinds of appeals. There's different kind of strategies for appeal, depending on if it's a merit-based appeal or a need-based appeal. If you have special circumstances or a better school gave you a better offer, there's all kinds of ways to do an appeal. But when you do an appeal, sometimes you have to go back 2 or 3 times. You're going to want to tell your story, right? Because the financial aid forms, they basically just ask for how much you have and how much do you make. They don't take into consideration things like cost of living or debt or aging parents that you're caring for, all these special circumstances that impact you negatively financially and reduce, how much you can afford to pay for college. So you're going to want to tell that story. Many cases, you might want to ask for a specific amount of aid instead of saying we need more money. You might say, look, this is how much we can afford. We've done the calculations, et cetera. Um, Show the awards other callers have given you. Like, hey, look, I mean, I went to College of Worcester as an undergrad. Their competitor down the road is Denison or Kenyon. If Kenyon offers a better package than Worcester and you want to go to Worcester, tell Worcester, hey, Kenyon, show them, look how much Kenyon offered, kind of thing. Um, for business owners, a lot of times the schools will not accept business expenses on the front end when they make an offer to you. You can challenge that. You can go back and say, make a case based on that. And you can be persistent in the appeals process. You don't have to be afraid of this. I get parents are always afraid of this, like, oh, they're gonna take away my student's admission. They're not going to do that. Okay. In fact, if you're politely persistent, they'll see that as demonstrating interest. So you're going to let them know, no, we really do want to go there. We're trying to figure out a way to make this affordable. So don't be afraid of the appeals process. Um, it's great if the student leads the charge because, after all, it's the student's education that the student is buying. I know parents are often paying, but if the student's leading the charge, that's often an effective strategy. And parents are often to say, well, we want to put enrollment deposit down so we don't leave our space. There's pros and cons to that. There's trade-offs to that, right? If you put your enrollment deposit down, you agree to sign up, you might lose some leverage in your ability to appeal. So we advise a lot of families, just be patient and let the appeals process play out because you're the customer, you're the consumer, right? And so you don't want to lose out on any aid because you're too anxious to put that enrollment deposit. Or worst case, put the enrollment deposit down and then go through the appeals process. Somebody else gives you a better deal. You just lose the couple $100 on the enrollment or something like that. But Kevin, anything you want to add to that, Murph?
Oh, there's a lot of questions like, can you appeal after acceptance? Can you appeal it? I'm still doing appeals. I just submitted 3 appeals this week for families, Princeton, BU, and Cornell. Like it's not too late to appeal, even if your students accepted and to your point, paid the enrollment deposit. So if we have any 2025 families on the call tonight, definitely worth still like considering, still looking into and meeting with us
Yeah,
to see
definitely.
if you can appeal. But no, you covered appeals. I humble brag. Well, it's not really humble, but this year, what are we at? Like between 4.5 and 5 million in extra aid on appeals.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, you heard
appeals
that
is
right,
like,
parents. Million.
yeah, well, appeals are literally like the strongest, in my opinion, like one of the biggest areas families can save, particularly divorced families and business owners. A
Absolutely.
lot of my successful appeals this year, 30, 40, $50,000 extra per year in financial aid were from business owners because of either one, like the Princeton appeal I just submitted, business owner, but because of one, business valuation, or two, um, the expenses that the school's disallowing, which I think we'll talk about in a future slide. But
Yeah, and homeowners as well, home equity.
home equity, yeah, that's a big one for appeals.
Yeah.
But okay, so let me stop sharing once more. And we will go back into my cap for a second. I wanted to show how you can upload your award and see if you have a chance to appeal. But admittedly, I have not uploaded an award in 2.0. So I will say this, you can upload your award and it will literally say you have a very strong chance of appealing, you have a strong chance, less likely, or you really don't have a chance of appealing. And we're using our data, our information to be able to share that with families. But that is part of the process that you can use the software for. There are a lot of circumstances where the situation is way too complex for software to recognize. Oftentimes, business owners, divorce families, the software might not be able to recognize that, but you absolutely should still put your reward in there. And just understand that if your situation's super complex, meet with us, right? That's what Jason and I are here for, and we have an entire team of pros who are here for that. But definitely utilize this feature. It's one of the, I'd say, parts of our program that families love and write into us about and thank us for. So I wanted to emphasize that. In addition to that, I don't think there's a good way to show it here in the software, but for home equity here, let me go here for a second, parent info. Right, so go in. If you put yes for home equity, right, let's just say I'm going to increase the amount now to 300,000, save. You're going to see that this new SAI, there's a big range, right? 38 to 45,000. That is something that Jason mentioned. Home equity is a big aspect in terms of appeal. And sometimes the colleges will include all home equity, and that's where this 45,000 number is coming from. Sometimes they'll include no home equity, like Harvard, Princeton, MIT. They don't use home equity, right? But then schools like Boston College and Providence and Northeastern use all of your home equity. And that too is built into the cost projections. So just definitely keep that in mind. And that's a big opportunity for planning. If you have a lot of home equity, well, maybe we avoid the schools that use all of your home equity. So definitely things to consider. And in addition to that, we had a couple of questions in here, and that can be entered into my profile and parent info. We had a couple of questions about I'm remarried or there's a step parent in the picture. And unfortunately, the colleges do consider step parent information. So just picture this for a second. Two parents who are both remarried, right? And, in this year, let's just say divorced or separated. We're going to have the ex-parent's information and we're going to have the parent information. But you might have to include household information because some of the schools do look at all four parents. And that needs to be part of the initial projections. And maybe that could be something that can be appealed, right? So definitely a consideration there as well. And then let me stop sharing my cap. I'm doing my best. I'm sorry, jumping between my cap and the slides. I am not a pro at that. So I do sincerely apologize. But let me share the next slide.
Answering questions here, so.
All good, all good. Can you see this on your end, Jason? Is it
Yep.
okay, cool. All right, so a big planning opportunity for any divorce family is who should be the custodial parent. And usually there's enough time to figure this out. Who's the most advantageous parent to use? And who should we consider? That was a very big question in the chat tonight. It's tough to say on a presentation. We don't have the details. We don't have all of the facts that we need to know. Also the tax returns. So meet with Jason and I, see if we can help. Now, in terms of, does it matter if a biological parent is the custodial parent? Yes. You definitely want to consider that which biological parent is the custodial parent and which parent the student spends the most time with and which parent provides the most financial support. All things that you definitely need to consider. Now, there are plenty, most schools don't consider the non-custodial parent, right? I mean, there's probably, I don't know the exact amount, but there's probably less than a couple of hundred schools that actually use the non-custodial parent information out of the over 4,000 colleges across the country. So if your situation were to be one that it doesn't make sense to get the non-custodial parent information involved, maybe their income and assets are so high that it'll mess up how much financial aid you qualify for, that's a really big planning opportunity to look at the right schools that maybe don't use their information. Now, plenty of families are in situations where the non-custodial parent, right? The student's non-custodial parent is not in the picture. Does that mean we're stuck? Does that mean we're not going to get financial aid? Does that mean that like we can't fill out these forms? Well, it depends if you can get approved for a waiver or not. So when you're filling out a waiver, they're primarily looking at, has there been contact? Has there been abuse? Or is there any financial support? And if the school approves the waiver, then no, you don't have to use their information. If the school denies the waiver, then yeah, unfortunately, if that parent, the waiver is denied, and that parent has to provide their information and they don't, it really could jeopardize your family getting any financial aid. And that kind of leads to this next one, which is another popular one. You know, what if the non-custodial parent does not want to complete the financial aid forms? Well, unfortunately, if the school denies the waiver, they have to, or your student will not get financial aid from that school. And the FAFSA schools, they don't use non-custodial parent information. They only use custodial parent information, whereas CSS profile schools, I'd say most of them use non-custodial parent information to some extent. So that does make a difference for sure, because maybe the information is completely left out. And with CSS profile schools too, there's other considerations because those schools are using the CSS profile for a reason. They're typically giving a lot of need-based financial aid. So it could also have other implications as well. Any questions that I need to worry about, or can I move on to the next slide?
Um, I think I'm looking to see if I think I've answered. Yeah, I think you're good.
73 questions so far answered.
Whew.
You guys are awesome. All right. Now, for business owners, I have secondary real estate. Is it a business? Someone just wrote into the Q&A before, my other property is owned in an LLC. Businesses are included as excuse me, on the FAFSA and on the CSS profile, but real estate, right, depending on your Schedule E on your tax return, real estate is going to be reported as real estate, right? And that is something that the colleges do even look at. So you have to keep that in mind. Now, when it comes to valuing a business, it's tough. And this is one of the biggest areas where I see families mess up, overvaluing a business. It's definitely tough. And, you know, we're primarily looking for what assets does the business own that could be sold, right? So like land, machinery, property, a building, you know, inventory, right? But revenue, not really using that in business valuations. And it's definitely something where you can be strategic and literally qualify for thousands more in financial aid if you do this right. Now, when it comes to the business section of the CSS profile, so if you own one business, they're going to ask for that information. If you own 5 businesses, they're going to ask for information on all of the businesses, but you do want to enter it correctly, right? I mean, they're literally asking for tons of tax information now from all of the businesses, business values, tax information, something as simple as what year was the business started. Tons of questions on businesses, and you definitely need to do that correctly. Jason, I would feel like I need to give you this question. Should I be hiring my child? Because I know you just got this question like twice last week.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
it depends.
Yeah, that's my answer. I mean, it's such a complicated situation because, we're not tax advisors, but there's some tax advantages to doing that, but it could hurt you on the financial aid side, depending.
It could hurt you on the financial aid side, particularly at the CSS schools because they really don't have much of an income protection allowance. But at the FAFSA schools, like there is a much higher income protection allowance. The hard thing is when you're doing this tax planning, right? You have to be thinking years ahead. Now, there's also opportunities too for when your students in college, maybe they're just getting merit scholarships, and maybe there is a reason to consider hiring your student and saving on taxes that way. But it all depends. And these are reasons that families do meet with us. Now, how do I appeal? Well, first off, it depends on what type of appeal, right? Need or merit. And then the strategy would really depend on your circumstances, right? It could be something as simple as leverage from another college, or it could be complex like business losses and business valuation and things like that. But it's something that you would appeal spring of your student's senior year. As soon as you get the financial aid award is when you appeal. All right. This one's also a popular topic, home equity key considerations. So how do the colleges on my child's list consider home equity? Well, it's going to depend on the schools on the list. If they're using the CSS profile, there's a good chance that they're looking at home equity, all or most of it. And that is something that's built into the cost projections in MyCap. But they will, at some schools, consider all of it. I mentioned BC before, equivalent to a savings account, right? So if you have 500,000 or $1 million in equity in your house, Boston College is going to assess that at the exact same rate as the money that you have in your checking account or your savings account. Now, there are going to be some schools that I'm in New Jersey, public school here is Rutgers. They don't look at your home equity, right? And there are some CSS profile schools, very, very competitive. MIT, I mentioned before, that don't use home equity at all. So it really just depends on the schools on your students list, but there's a big planning opportunity. Now, home equity could seriously impact need-based eligibility if it's being factored in. And a lot of families consider using their homes as a resource to actually pay for college, right? And maybe you have a home equity line of credit, or maybe you have a home equity loan. All of that could, if it's drawn down on, impact and really reduce the equity that you have in your house. In terms of reducing home equity exposure, it kind of leads to the next question. It's, what am I valuing it at, right? And is there any way to strategically value it less? And is there anything I can do to really increase the debt? Are there any things that I should be considering, any strategies that I should use to be able to report a higher balance against the property? So those are the two ways that you can kind of reduce exposure. And in terms of a market value, it depends, right? There's going to be a few different things that your family could look at. You might know, like, hey, I know my house is worth X, right? Well, you can reasonably reduce that using something called the IRS quick sale value. But then there are other factors as well that some colleges use, right? I know some schools call it the College Board value, which is based on your purchase and purchase price. And then I saw a family write in before about the tax assessed value. So it's not one size fits all for home value. It really depends on your circumstances, your purchase price, market value, what the house is showing on Zillow, you name it. They're all factors in how do you come up with the lowest value for your house. And in terms of appeal, home equity is a big, big, big thing that we appeal always, right? But it's something that you have to really explain why you can't access the home equity. That being said, it's a super, super strong reason to appeal. I think Matt just I think it was last month, got 64,000 from Georgetown, just appealing home equity. And I know that I saw tons and tons of extra aid on appeals from getting home equity removed from the equation. So definitely something to consider there as well. But all right, so we are coming to an end here. Already talked about our mission, and we're truly here to help families. So I want to reiterate that everyone has the opportunity to meet with Jason and myself. We are always busy, and we do ask that if you're going to meet with us, you schedule your appointment tonight. Not to meet with us tonight, you just book it tonight, and you try and meet with us within the next 2 or 3 weeks. That's definitely something we're going to ask. And one of the key things that we ask all families to do before meeting with us, please create a free MyCap account, just so we can have a really informed conversation about where your family stands and what's the best way for you to approach this process and get as much financial aid as you possibly can. And financial aid, when we talk about it, it includes scholarships as well. So let me stop sharing. All right, so I want to put the link in the chat once more. I know you're going all in on the Q&A. You've done a great job, 87 questions now.
Typing fast.
We are doing our best, folks.
Yeah.
But I just put the link in the chat again, and I'll even go as far as just screen sharing. Literally, it's easy as you'll see a calendar pop up for Jason and myself, right? And you're literally just picking a time. We don't have too many days available over the next few weeks, so please make sure you grab that spot tonight. And aside from that, why don't we spend the last few minutes um, answering some questions for the group? Also, if you guys are enjoying the presentation, let us know. We love emojis. Definitely, let us know. Let me stop sharing that. All right, so let's do some. Oh, thank you. Let's do some Q&A out loud. Do you want to take this one?
I'll let you take it.
You need a break.
Take, give my brain a break.
Um, okay.
Mhm.
What if a child lives outside the parent home? Is the parent info on the FAFSA? So parent information is considered, or excuse me, not considered, required unless certain circumstances have been met. That includes the student was at risk of being homeless. That includes like a legal guardianship or kinship. It's all listed out there on the federal government's website, but that you can't just decide, do I include parent information or not? You have to kind of qualify the student as an independent to leave it off. Otherwise, until your student's 24 years old, you have to include parent information on the FAFSA. It's an unfortunate reality. Unfair, I'll say too. But all right, so that was one. Please put some more questions in the Q&A for the next 2 or 3 minutes. Um,
Follow up to that, Murph. Does that this came up a couple of times? What about grandparents? Students who live with grandparents and the parents aren't involved.
Depends the parent situation. I worked with a family this year where the grandparent was the guardian for the student, but because of the student situation, no. Student was considered legally and independent for the sake of financial aid, and we did not have to include grandma's information at all. But again, she just checked one of those boxes. I forget exactly how many of those questions there are, but you can go on studentaid.gov and you can even see like what would qualify a student to be independent. So you know ahead of time, will grandparent or other family information be included or not? Emancipated minors, yep, you're an independent. If you're an emancipated minor, you're absolutely an independent. Um, which colleges count businesses? Well, businesses were actually just added on the FAFSA 2 years ago. So now all colleges look at businesses, and business owners no longer are kind of excluded, like family small businesses were excluded from the FAFSA. No more. Businesses have to go on the FAFSA and they have to go on the CSS profile. So all colleges look at businesses. Um,
You want a break?
yes, please.
All right. So when you say custodial parents, the one provides more support, do you mean larger percentage of income or just more actual dollars? No, it's actual more actual dollars over the previous 12 months. So it's not a larger percentage of our income, it's who's paying for more. So a lot of times you just have to add up the expenses, do the math, take some time and look at all the expenses, your monthly expenses, groceries and clothes, but also, one-time expenses, extracurriculars, prom, all that kind of stuff. I met with a family this week and it was pretty funny. Mom and dad, and we were going through this exercise and for a different purpose, but the same exercise. And I said, how much was prom this year? And she said $6,000. And the dad went, "What?" I was like, "Oh, oops." The dad had no idea. But yeah, it's the actual dollars over the previous 12 months.
The stories we could tell.
I know,
Uh,
right?
we got a question. I wanna say this one out loud. So will income be verified? So on the FAFSA, they're largely taking your information from the IRS, unless for some reason it cannot get transferred over. So we're primarily not even really entering your income. It's coming straight from the IRS. And on the CSS profile, a lot of the schools ask for your tax returns. So that's one thing that can't really mess around with income, and the colleges will see your true income. But okay, back to a break for me, all you.
Yeah, sure. My son is 17, class 26, filed separately. Taxes, I still claim as dependent. Does this cause a problem? Nope, it won't cause a problem that he filed separately. He's still considered dependent for financial aid purposes. All right, let's see. Is financial aid available for medical or dentistry colleges? Yes, that's sort of beyond the scope of tonight, but there some you could get potentially some gift aid from those, but most students fund medical school, dental school with grad plus loans. Is usually the way to do it. There's some strategies around that if you want to talk to us. Like public service loan forgiveness options, income-driven repayment plans, those kinds of things. But most students fund medical dental school with grad plus loans, and the parents are off the hook, hopefully, with that. Is 2 year look back for step parents too. Yeah, if you've been married, if you were, you were remarried in the year, the base income year, the prior year, the step parents' income and assets will be reported as well. Yes, but if it's not, if it's a recent marriage, they're not on that 2 year look back then. Okay, do college take into account if the other parent is deceased and left no assets to our student? I'm one. Okay, it all depends on the year. If the parent was deceased in the last year or so, and their income is still from the prior year, if it's still there on the tax returns, you'll have to report it. But then you can manually make changes in the FAFSA, and you can also bring this up during the appeals process. Wonderful. All right, good. Let's see here. If the second parent's name is not listed on the student birth certificate, you need to share that parent's name. On the CSS profile, you will, unless you get granted a waiver. But for FAFSA, if you're separated or divorced, it would just be the custodial parent. Let's see here. For S Corp, self-employed that pays health insurance, but that's reported on that is counted as income. Um,
What?
yeah, I'm thinking maybe untaxed income. Is that what they're thinking there? Maybe. Yeah, that's a complicated one. Whoever asked that question, book a consultation with us so we can take a deeper dive into that one. Business cases are complex. Divorce, but my cap is requiring spouse AGI. How do I continue to register? For the purposes of projecting, you should try to project as much as accurately as possible if you're looking at CSS profile schools. Excuse me. Um, if it's FAFSA only schools, the projection could still be accurate if you put in zero perhaps there. So it all depends on the types of schools, but you want to try to estimate that to get accurate projections. All right. So am I correct in understanding it doesn't matter which parent claims the child on taxes, both parents will be required to file the FAFSA and CSS will be considered the process. So it doesn't matter which parent claims the child on your taxes. Or if you file the CSS profile, both are going to be required to file. But if it's a divorce or separation, only the custodial parent, financial custodial parent files the FAFSA. So it doesn't matter though which parents claim the kid on their taxes. Once accepted and attending, how is future financial aid awarded? Great question. You do have to reapply for financial aid every single year. And some schools will honor the first year's award package through all 4 years, but other schools will adjust it from year to year. If there have been any changes in your income and your assets, your aid package could change. Another thing I want to mention too, if you get a merit scholarship, your kid gets a merit scholarship in that first year, a lot of times they have a GPA requirement to keep the scholarship. So ask me how I know that one. My own son.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Oh,
I just learned this week. So,
oh God.
right. So he's getting a job.
Uh, mm.
All right. You want to take a couple?
Yeah, and then these are the last two because
Oh,
we both have
last.
to
Oh,
go.
we're out of
Yeah,
time. My goodness. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. You're still making me laugh, Owen. Sibling 529 considered not on the FAFSA, yes on the CSS profile. They do ask for it still. Exceptionally high performing student really can't avoid CSS profile schools because they're just looking at those competitive schools that use the CSS profile. Um, any suggestions? Well, at $300,000 in income, you still could qualify for need-based aid at a lot of colleges across the country. Also, being step parent and parent, quick example. Family I worked with, if you took both parents, right, custodial and non-custodial, and combined their income, the student was looking at Skidmore. Skidmore would have been 60,000. Because of how we strategized and how we did it, it's 19,000. And they do ask for non-custodial information and custodial information, but there are some schools that don't use non-custodial parent information that are really competitive. And in addition to that, there are some schools that the percentage or the amount of non-custodial information it's less. Um, So it's just being strategic about this process, picking the right schools, and it also sounds like the appeals process would be very strong for your family. All right, I think it. I'd say it's time. Um,
Yeah.
but really
106
great
questions
questions,
answered.
everyone.
Yeah.
All right, so I put a link in the chat. Please, everyone, schedule a meeting with myself and Jason. We will dive into more detail, and most importantly, we will tell you exactly how to navigate this process. And aside from that, I'd say thank you for the great questions. Over 100, 106 questions answered. Incredible. But thank you all for the great questions. Jason, thank you for your time and for making me laugh. And everyone, thank you. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, have a good night.
Have a good night.
Bye.